Warning: this fictitious story contains implied cult worship, occult sacrifice, strange thought processing, and a disturbed individual in general. Mature audiences only beyond this point. Now, please enjoy the unfortunate and unseen sacrifices made. The dark shadows of the ominously shaded forest became more pronounced as a dark cloud breezed over the brightly shining third-quarter moon, and its shimmering moonbeams disappeared from sight. However, the dark forest was not completely devoid of light, as a warm orange glow flickered behind a collection of dark oak trunks. The source of the glow was made from a fire, blazing within a large artificially made divot, surrounded by equally large baseball-sized rocks situated in a dark patch of dirt in the supposed forest meadow. Because of the numerous visits of frequent people and their dark practices, the surrounding trees had lost their leaves long before, and even decay had started eating away at several of the dark and twisted trunks. But standing around the fire, as though they were ominous and Gothic statues, were 5 robed dark figures with their hands outstretched into the air, and a chorus of chants taking over the atmosphere that was swept up and carried into the wind, along with the burning embers that disappeared into the abyssal black sky above. After their chanting went on for a few minutes, it soon stopped and they separated to begin cleaning the place up before they would return to their respective residences. One of those gathered was a young girl. Her jet black long hair matched her dark robe, and her pale skin shone stark white in contrast to the dark colors. She moved about slowly and with a deadpan and nearly melancholic expression upon her flawless and pale face. She shoved several different things into large and glossy trash bags, but paused when her eyes fell onto a yellow collar with a small bell and license clip to it. She pursed her lips, recalling the black and white cat it belonged to, and felt a pang in her gut at the red splatters in the dirt and all around the collar. However, her face never changed, and she reached out to pluck the accessory and drop it into the trash can. "Tristan, I see we're lacking one person tonight." She looked up at who was speaking to her, and found one of the other members of the group standing next to her. The rest of the group were minding their own business and putting out the fire. She peered into his sharp, pale blue eyes, and quietly nodded her head at him. While the others busied themselves in the background, she kept her eyes occupied to the trash bag in hand. He continued to speak in his affable manner. "Let me guess, she didn't say anything to you again, right?" She nodded her head in silence once again, not looking up into his eyes at all. "Well, I have to say, bringing her into the group, it's not really the best decision after all." She stayed quiet, wringing the trash bag in her hands as she worked to quash her growing emotions. "Ah, well, it's either you tell her or the responsibility falls on me, as usual." She said nothing, but nodded once more, head downward. And with that, he bid her farewell and walked off to go bother the others. When she finally finished her task, she walked along with the select few others that were dismissed. He was nowhere to be seen. Neither was one of the other girls, but she paid no mind to it. Once they reached the entrance to the park they were in, she discarded the bag into a nearby park bin and walked away from her group, who all stepped into their own cars to return home. But she always enjoyed taking a stroll in the darker hours alone, the only sound being that of nature. She'd always preferred the company of silence and solitude over anything else. Not that she really tried to be sociable. She absolutely loathed people. They could all die and rot for all she cared. But she didn't. And she wasn't going to change her mind soon. She blinked and looked over her shoulder. A white car pulled up the road and slowed to a snail's pace next to her. "Hey, you need a ride, sweet cheeks?" The voice came from inside the car. The guy had rolled the passenger window down and was slightly leaning over the seat towards the window as he spoke. She paused where she was for a moment, just staring at the guy in silence. That was usually enough to make anyone trying to strike up conversation with her leave her alone from her intensity and pressure. And this was no exception. "Fine, bitch, be that way," he spat as he rolled his window up, and he drove off in an angry speed, dropping her back into her cool, tranquil darkness. A success, as usual. Though she wasn't smiling, her mood lightened slightly, and she continued her walk back home. She came upon the darkened street and grew more somber at the sight of the neighborhood she was coming upon. Everything was stagnant and still, and even the once chilling wind had fallen to silence. The bottoms of her worn, faded black sneakers tamped the worn-down and broken stone path up to her porch. She inserted her key, and as soon as she opened the door, she was met with biting voices deeper into the home, arguing with quiet yet forceful disdain. She sighed quietly, and entered fully into the dark and somber home before shutting the door. She didn't bother entering the kitchen, as that was where the dispute was taking place, and as soon as there was a smashed bottle, she paused in the middle of the stairs she climbed. An explosion of fury flooded through her veins, but it took all her power to keep her feet glued to the stairs and not legging it into the kitchen to confront both parents. She didn't need to put herself into that situation again. She continued her ascent up the stairs until she reached the darkened hallway. She looked to her left at the closed door and at the crack at the bottom. The gap between the door and the carpeted floorboards was stuffed with a fuzzy blanket. She blinked blankly at it. She had told him numerous times not to do that. A threat could walk straight up to his door without him seeing or hearing it, and he could be dead within minutes. But her ear twitched at the other smash of a bottle downstairs, and she thought more to herself about it. Perhaps she shouldn't act as an intruder tonight after all, and scare him into understanding again. She'd leave him alone for now, but he was lucky she was there to teach him how to be safe. She turned around and entered the room opposite and shut her own door silently. Whatever little light outside her own room streamed in from the gap below her door and shimmered on her dark bare floorboards. She untied the yarn of her dark cloak and hung it from her closet, not bothering to turn on her light, and walked towards her bed. She sat down on the mattress, the springs creaking loudly in dismay, and she just proceeded to stare into the black void that was her open closet. She thought about a variety of different things, ranging from the most simple matters of what would be had for breakfast tomorrow to the darker depths of questioning her own existence and mortality. She was never capable of keeping her mind in check, as one would say, and it would freely go off on its own accord. It's been like this ever since she could remember, and she knew she was born broken. She just simply accepted it. Just before she could go too far into swimming into the dark swamp that was her expansive but also enclosed and spiraling mind, there was a loud thud in her dark bathroom, followed by spastic skittering running every which way until whatever it was settled on the idea of jumping into her bathtub. Curious, she stood and made her way over. Upon opening the door, she didn't bother to turn on the lights, as she didn't want to hurt her eyes, and there was just enough light to show her most of what she needed to see. The whole bathroom held a serene yet dark blue hue, the white light from the distant streetlight cutting through the contrasting color and drawing lines of light into the shadows. She peered into the bathtub, the shower curtain already partially pulled back to allow her to look in without disturbing the thing in there already. She saw an unusual dark fluffy bundle curled onto the smooth white porcelain, and it shuddered every once in a while, giving the effect it was either scared or crying abnormally for an animal. In any normal situation, she would immediately grab the creature and throw it back out of the window from where it obviously came in. But something halted her hand from reaching out and going through with her impulse. When she was younger, she used to play outside, and a neighborhood dog that was known to be an aggressive barker and incredibly scary to all the children of the neighborhood at the time, had ended up getting out from the worn wooden splintering red fence, which was more so splattered from dark red dried paint that was eerily akin to blood spatters. The golden retriever had raced immediately towards her and clamped its jaws around her arm. She had to go to the hospital for stitches and treatment. Her parents weren't happy about it, and they made sure she knew well of this, which is why she made sure to teach her brother well of the dangers the world had no problem offering. She refocused back in on the animal in the bathtub, but was surprised to find it looking straight back up at her. Large, dark amber eyes glinted brightly up at her, its wide black pupils seemingly bordered by a rich dark brown that slightly had pin-small lines shooting from the pupil as though it was mimicking the sun itself. She had never seen that in a cat before, but then again, it's not like she'd really tried looking. From looking into the animal's eyes, she felt a pull of emotion she'd never thought possible from her upbringing. It was so unnatural to her. She most certainly couldn't place a term or name to it. "That's enough," she abruptly asserted to herself, pulling herself out of whatever stupor she was put into. She even made the cat jerk in place from her curt voice, and it then glared fearfully at her with sparkling, slitted yellow eyes. It hissed viciously, then leapt straight at her. On instinct, she flinched back, but instead of the cat attacking her like she initially thought, it veered off to the side and flashed out of the bathroom in a skitter of rapid paws. She grit her teeth, fear flashing through her gut at the thought of it getting out of her room and wreaking havoc and endangering her brother. She hated the fear, and thought she had gone way beyond the point of feeling anything other than the vacant hollowness she found so much solace in. She raced into the room after the cat, mind already deciding on what she would do with it when she caught the thing. Her club would be more than pleased to have a new animal accompaniment for their meeting coming up very, very soon. She burst through the door into the room, eyes scanning through the darkness for the animal. She saw something flash next to the bed by the corner. She made for it immediately, but stopped where she was in a realization. From the way the bed was situated, there was absolutely no space to walk on the left side of the bed, as there was just a stiff wall. And that impossibility was exactly where the cat ended up disappearing into. What? How? She didn't understand how it could have happened. She spun around when she heard the paw steps skittering again, and saw the cat making for the bathroom again. She quickly lunged towards the animal, and successfully scooped it up from the floor with her pale hands. It released an infuriated snarl and slashed at her right arm, causing her to instantly let go. It sprang towards the bathroom's door frame, but whirled and faced her with bared white teeth and bristling black fur. She watched a bright red crimson drop towards the floor, and start streaming down like a dark red waterfall. But she didn't feel pain like the several times she got hurt before. The blood spilling out was just warm, but other than that, it was just uncomfortably cool. You're Zarina, aren't you?" The cat seemed to still, the growling trailing off as its eyes widened up at her. "You are! This was incredible. She was real. The one thing she even joined the club for, worshipped for, bled for. She finally answered, and just as she was beginning to lose faith. Maybe Carson wasn't lying after all." The cat watched her, but then turned on its paws and began making for the bathroom. "No!" A powerful emotion flashed through her veins at this, but from an instilled instinct of quashing all overwhelming emotions throughout her life. She wasn't given any time to understand or put a name to it at all. She instantly dropped to her knees, and Zarina whipped around at her again, ready to defend against whatever attack she expected. But no, Tristan wasn't moving to attack. Instead, she folded over with her forehead to the ground and arms clenched and quivering on either side of her. She was desperate. Now that Zarina was real and in her room, she'd be damned to lose out on this connection. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disrespect you. I didn't know it was you." She knew she was groveling, but she pushed away her pride for the sake of Zarina's blessing. Tristan stayed like that for a moment, pleading mentally with all her being that this entity remain. Then, after several beats of silence and feeling the crushing devastation soon befalling her at the expectation the animal left, her watery eyes shot open upon a sudden touch to the top of her head. She looked up and found that the cat stood over her. Her yellow eyes were calm and pupils wide like two tranquil pools. And it was then, for the first time in years, Tristan truly cried.